Good afternoon. Thank you, Randall, for your history of the Rocky and its many accomplishments, and for letting me gather as many archival materials as I could in May of 2009. I also appreciate the opportunity that the Reynolds Journalism Institute and the University of Missouri have given me to tell another chapter in the story of the Rocky. Today, I hope to accomplish three objectives. First, to relay to you the events that led to the Denver Public Library owning the Rocky Mountain News. Second, to briefly cover the agreement between Scripps and the library. And third, to review the issues encountered by the library as it began to integrate into its digital management system the born digital content of the Rockies archives. That digital management system is OCLC's product, Content DM. By the way, as I was reading a news bulletin that came out from OCLC, University of Missouri's former chancellor now serves on its board. That just happened. Yep. Okay, anyway, back to this. From my experience with the Rockies archives, I hope you will find two emerging themes. That newspapers are primarily interested in producing their daily editions, and libraries are concerned with archiving yesterday's editions. Second, newspaper editors purchase content management systems to achieve their primary objectives, and archivists procure a different type of software to preserve and make accessible historic data. A little bit of context about my department. The Rocky is much older than the Denver Public Library, which became a public utility in 1889. Within the library, the Western History Collection was founded in 1935. Its mission is to cover the history of the peoples and their cultures of the Trans-Mississippi West. And yes, we do have the history of Missouri. Today, the Western History Collection consists of 4,400 archival collections, over 250,000 monographs and journals, 5,000 maps, 5,500 pieces of art, and with the addition of the Rocky Mountain News archives, over 1.1 million photographs. In 1999, I began working with the Western History Collection and learned that the department had several 100,000 negatives from the Rocky Mountain News dating from 1940 and into the 1980s. Unfortunately, there was no acquisitions agreement, no bequest, no sign-off, just the memo you see on your screen, which really didn't help. To obtain permission to provide access to these images, I began making inquiries with the Rocky without success. Then, in 2006, cartoonists Ed Stein of the Rocky and Mike Keefe of the Denver Post approached me about having an exhibit at the library for the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists. They were having a convention that year in Denver. For the convention, each cartoonist can submit up to 3 drawings, which we installed in the Western History Gallery. At the opening reception sponsored by the Rocky, Ed Stein introduced me to John Temple, editor and publisher of the Rocky. When I pointed out that the library had shelves of Rocky negatives, John responded, "We wondered what happened to them." It was the beginning of a beautiful relationship. John and I began discussing how the library and the Rocky could partner on selling historic newspaper images. Attorneys for both sides entered into the discussion and even drafted an agreement. Then on February 27, 2009, the Rocky published its last edition. John recommended to Scripps that they give all of the Rocky's archives to the library. And the congratulations to Scripps is that they had the will to do so. So over the next 4 years, as we negotiated up and down, they persisted in making sure that we received the archives. So we get to slide 2. Nope. There we go. That is the archives donation agreement. And by the way, I have 10 copies of this agreement if anyone wants it. Also, Ed, if you wanted to put it online, you could do so, and people could read it that way. Because as we embarked down this trail, well, we found out that there was no precedent for us to follow. Our attorneys were really in kind of in a new territory, both at Scripps as well as the city attorney's office. After 4 years of negotiations between the attorney at Scripps and the Denver City Attorney's Office, the library became the owner of the Rocky archives, including the copyright to the text and the images. The only property that Scripps did not grant to the library was the Rocky's URL and trademark, which it sold to a third party. Specifically, the archival digital assets that Scripps gave are over 400,000 born digital photographs, cached copy of the RockyMountainNews.com, electronic text of the Rocky Mountain News from 1989 to 2009, and 7 years of PDFs of published pages of the Rocky Mountain News. The agreement clearly states that the library has the sole discretion to determine the schedule for making the archives accessible. This is extremely important for us. We were on no timeline. Therefore, we could use our resources as we saw fit. This schedule was driven by the availability of resources, including budget. I got lucky during this period of time. I had an asset, real estate, that was being sold, and so I placed on the side $125,000 to begin to move the images into an online resource. Scripps gifted to the library other archival assets, including management documents, reporters' notes, the newspaper morgue, print photographs, a reference book library, and artist sketches, most of which I boxed and transported across Denver Civic Center from the Rockies offices to the library and happily lost 10 pounds in the process. The born digital photographs were those images that the Rocky published in its newspaper and online, including the Pulitzer Prize-winning photographs. Scripps did not give us the entire 7 gigabytes of images and streaming video that it had on its servers, because many were outtakes and video footage created by contract photographers who maintained the rights to their work. So we received only those images that the Rocky published and printed in its newspaper. These published images are now with the library's vendor, OCLC, and my colleague James Rogers will describe them in more detail. As with the digital photographs, the web page used proprietary software. Rocky's staff in Denver designed its web page. However, Scripps' IT staff in Kentucky managed the data. The IT staff also modified the web page software over the years, making it impossible to simply transfer the Rockies web pages in a dynamic format. The library now has a static version of the web page. These data files are to be kept in a digital dark archive until after we have launched the photo database at the Denver Public Library. And by the way, many of the inquiries that I received from former Rocky employees asking to have access to their articles really pertain to access to their content that appeared on the web page. In other words, the web page for former employees became their resume. The electronic text of the Rocky is perhaps procedurally the most complicated piece of the archives. And let me try to explain. When a journalist penned a story, the text eventually found its way into print and also became electronically stored by Newsbank Incorporated, a commercial vendor that provides an electronic archive for the newspaper publishers and subsequently resells the data as a historic database to libraries. Scripps was able to present the library with the electronic text from the Rocky, but did inform Newsbank that the Denver Public Library owned the copyright to the text stored on Newsbank's servers. Which gets me to this agreement. Like any public or academic library, Denver Public subscribes to Newsbank to provide its users with electronic access to the Rocky as well as to the Denver Post. So as a result of the agreement with Scripps, the Denver Public Library became the owner of the content that Newsbank previously contracted with Scripps to disseminate to libraries, and at the same time, Denver Public was still a subscriber to Newsbank. If you thought that was confusing, it was. If you thought that the agreement with Scripps took a long time to complete, the library's contract with Newsbank took a year longer, 5 years. Our attorney congratulated me on my patience, and it paid off. Newsbank now became the library's vendor for selling the Rocky on microfilm and has an option to incorporate the 7 years of PDFs of the newspaper in case somebody wants to offer a digital facsimile of the Rocky to its subscribers for the entire run from 1859 to 2009. Also, because Denver repositories did not archive the Rocky from 1948 to 2009, the PDFs are the only known example of the newspaper in color. The electronic text is an ASCII file, which the library can store on its servers if it chooses to do so, and make accessible online if in case it doesn't renew its 3-year agreement with Newsbank. Back in October 2007, as John Temple and I were discussing a joint venture involving the historic photographs, my college-age son, upon witnessing the Colorado Rockies' loss to the Boston Red Sox at the World Series, decided to take out his frustration on a Rocky Mountain News newsstand. He kicked the newsstand to the curb. Law enforcement noticed him, probably because he chose to destroy the newsstand that was in front of the Denver branch of the Federal Reserve. Fortunately for him and me, the Rocky did not press charges. Thank you.